Hello, and thank you for pushing play and joining us in our little corner of the online universe. Welcome to State of the Arts, a podcast which is supported by Fís Éireann, Screen Ireland, through the Screen Stakeholders Funding Scheme. I'm Des Doyle, a writer, director, and creative consultant with more than 25 years' experience in the worlds of film and TV production. And I will be your host as we bring you new episodes which will focus on someone who's been extremely successful in their chosen medium and will be both a look at their creative careers and current upcoming projects, as well as talking through some of the major news stories currently having an impact in their field of artistry. Today's guest on State of the Arts is Scott Farris. Scott is a senior entertainment executive with over 15 years' experience shaping global franchise storytelling. One of the earliest creative hires at Amazon MGM Studios and Prime Video, he helped build the studio from the ground up and played a key role in establishing Amazon as a major force in premium television. Scott pioneered Amazon's strategy for adapting global gaming franchises, securing and developing landmark properties including God of War, Mass Effect, Warhammer 40k, and The Sims, as well as the breakout hit Fallout, which drew over 100 million viewers worldwide and earned 16 Emmy nominations. Beyond gaming, his work focuses on large-scale world-building and IP-driven storytelling, with projects including Mike Flanagan's upcoming adaptation of Stephen King's Carrie, RoboCop with James Wan, and Fourth Wing, based on Rebecca Yarros's best-selling romantasy phenomenon. Scott is particularly passionate about the intersection of creativity, technology, fandom, and the future of franchise storytelling. Scott, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of State of the Arts. Really appreciate your time.
Of course, I'm excited to be here.
Could I start off by asking, maybe for people who aren't that familiar with what exactly a senior entertainment executive does, what does your job actually entail on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, my job changes, so it depends on the day. But on a good day, it's about shepherding the creative ideas of a television series. So my job really is to meet with writers and creators and directors and look at pieces of IP, whether that be books or video games or articles, movies, other TV shows, and figure out if something could be a really cool television series. And so that can come from me finding a video game or something that I'm passionate about, and then, you know, meeting with the rights holders and optioning that and building the team around that, whether that be bringing on producers or finding a creator that is also equally passionate or has an interesting point of view on how to turn that into a television series. Or it could be meeting with a writer and hearing their idea, an original idea, or they could bring me a piece of IP that they find to be really exciting. And then once we, lock in on that idea together, I help shepherd them through the process with Amazon. And so that's writing an outline and kind of being an outside eye to the creator and helping them shape that into then a script. And then when we're ready to greenlight the show, continuing that process, building the writer's room, overseeing bringing on other talent, directors, actors, everything, kind of just serving as somewhat of a producer, quote unquote, for the studio. And so that is my job.
We'll definitely dig into some aspects of that in a little more detail, maybe as we go along. But I'm curious to see, how did you get started in film and television? Where did your interest in this as a potential career path originate from?
People always ask me that, and I'm not 100% sure where it originated from. It always just felt like that's what I was going to be doing. I always just knew I was going to be in entertainment in some form or the other. I went to college. I went to Chattanooga University and studied theater and film, and then came up to Los Angeles, and I was actually acting. It was a little working actor, and at the same time producing reality television. And I didn't really know what my job is now, a development executive. I didn't know that existed. I just, as I was acting, I realized I wanted to have a little bit more hands-on in helping to shape the overall creative. And I didn't really know what that was. I had a sense of what a producer was, but only kind of an outsider's sense of hearing the term and hearing what that meant. And then I got a temp job over a pilot season at ABC, Disney, and that was kind of my first immersion into what a development job was, what they did, what the business of television was, and that was really interesting to me. And I kind of took off from there.
If I'm correct, I think you spent, well, actually, how long were you working with Disney before you ended up making the move to Prime Video?
I think 4 years, somewhere around there. Yeah. And then I came to Amazon very early. I saw that they were hiring a junior executive at the company to start a drama development team under an executive, and they hadn't really released anything yet. I'd like to say I had some sort of vision of the future and knew what Amazon was going to become, but I really just saw an opportunity to build something and thought it sounded cool, and luckily got the job. And I've been here ever since.
That must have been a very exciting kind of period of time as well to be coming in, because those first couple of years, I suppose, that Amazon the whole industry would have been going through quite a remarkable period of change as the whole streaming system was being set up and there were multiple different streamers coming into play. What were the big kind of lessons that you learned going along through that initial period? And how much influence, or did the other streaming services have any kind of influence in terms of how you went about developing the slate and what kind of projects you were interested in developing at that point in time?
Oof, big question. I think my entire career has been marked by the entertainment industry being in transition. It feels like my entire life it has been. But yeah, those early days that were awesome, and continue. The job continues to be awesome. I wouldn't say we were like particularly influenced by other streamers. We were really kind of running our own race and just looking to do cool, innovative things and work with artists that we used to go around and say, what's the idea that's been burning a hole in your pocket that you could never get made? And I think we still hold that to today, and are just really interested in doing really cool, ambitious programming.
Were there any particular things that you were learning as you kind of worked your way up the development ranks there that, like, are like essential skills of the trade for development executive, if you like?
I think it's all about, for me, I really learned how to hone my point of view and what I really thought and was excited about. I also learned that, my job is to be a shepherd. These aren't my shows. I'm not the creator of these shows. I'm here to help support creatives and help support the artists building these shows. And again, as I mentioned earlier, serve as an outside eye and kind of a first audience, saying, helping make sure that what they're trying to convey is coming across, and really just serve as a partner and a resource to them.
You seem to have, from a relatively early stage, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, focused in the area of kind of tentpole production and this idea of kind of franchise storytelling, but specializing in genre fare. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I can't say it was a real active thing that I tried to do, but it does feel just kind of natural, like of course that happened. My first series that I worked on was Man in the High Castle at Amazon, and that was our first kind of foray into big tentpole kind of genre storytelling, and it was really successful for us. And at the time, we went to become a global streaming service, and genre seemed to be something that really translated very well globally, and so that became a big area of opportunity at the company. And that was just something that I was always interested in growing up. I loved video games, I loved comic books, I loved fantasy novels. That was just a genuine interest of mine. And I kind of just followed that interest. And that's what I've been doing ever since, which is kind of funny. I do these big, big TV series now. And I kind of thought I got in the business to do like Saved by the Bell, or and now I'm doing these big, big fantasy shows, which is awesome.
Were they something that you and maybe some other people on the team were pushing for internally, or were the studio always interested in the potential of, because obviously the Man in the High Castle performed well, but did they need to see a show in that genre performing well for them before diving into that in maybe a bigger way?
I think That show doing very well was, of course, helpful. I think seeing the advent of shows like Game of Thrones and all of the Marvel movies and all of that, I'm sure had an influence on people that were much higher than me making decisions. But I think I personally lucked out in that the leadership of the company saw the potential there, and I happened to have that passionate interest, and so I got to continue working and building out those ideas.
One of the things about that particular area of television production is it's very expensive to do these kind of shows, right? So the stakes are quite high. What are the kind of elements that you really try to accomplish in the development phase to try and offset as much of the risk, if you like, going forward with the show as possible in relation to those like really, really kind of high budget shows?
I think creativity inherently sharing creativity in any way is a risk. So you can only mitigate so much. I think I look at it less at how do I mitigate risk and how do we tell stories that will resonate with the largest amount of people. And when I'm looking at genre storytelling, you can have these big worlds and fantastical creatures or big spaceships or whatever happens to be the genre. But at the end of the day, people watch and invest in stories because of the characters and because of the story being told. And so I try to think of things as I'm reading through projects and working on them. If you stripped all of the genre away, if you stripped all of the magic and fantasy, what is that character story that we're telling, and is that resonating with a really human perspective? Because at the end of the day, especially programming for the globe, we're really trying to access the human condition and tell a story that captures that imagination. And so the more you can get into the human storytelling, I think the fantasy is kind of the icing on the cake.
How much through your experience, I'm just curious because, a lot of writers would listen to this particular podcast, and personally, I've dealt with a lot of writers over the years as well. One of the shared experiences that at some point in time everybody's going to run into to some extent is development hell, right? I'm wondering from your point of view, because I would be kind of familiar enough with what the writer's experience of it is. I'm just wondering from the development side of it, when things do start to get tricky, are there kind of common reasons that you find that that's tends to happen? And what are the kind of solutions that you've kind of found have worked best for you over the last couple of years doing the job on a daily basis?
Development hell. That's such an intense word. I understand what you're saying. I think what happens, creativity, especially in this format, is inherently a collaboration, right? And I think where you can get into problems sometimes is if you're all running towards one direction, but then people start running in different directions. So I find it really important in the beginning to really, as a group, come together and figure out what is the goal with this story. Let's make sure we're all on the same page so that in the months and sometimes years that ensue, we all know the North Star and what we're shooting towards. I think you get into problems when people aren't on the same page initially, or the goalposts shift. And listen, sometimes that happens, and um, you can't foresee it or necessarily stop it sometimes. But for the most part, as much as you can, I try to. That is the one part of the process I try to control, is to make sure that we're all still operating. We start from the same goal and are all operating towards the same one. Because I think if you are all running in the same direction, then a lot of the problems tend to fall away.
When the drifts may arise, are they primarily in terms of tone or theme, or is it kind of overall vision of a project, or does it vary quite a bit?
I think it can vary quite a bit. Sometimes these processes take a very long time, and mandates shift. We try not to let that happen. Or as the creative process unfolds, something comes to an artist and that kind of transforms what they're thinking about the project, and that kind of moves away from what we were all thinking together. Like there's plenty. I can't really point to any one thing that happens. I think it's just the natural process of collaboration and creativity. And so the more you can hold to that initial idea, I think the better.
And how involved do you get personally, like, with the creators of the shows in terms of the writing? Are you someone, like, who would provide a lot of notes, a lot of, like, detailed feedback on scripts as they're being, like, worked up and developed? Or do you take a slightly more hands-off approach as you're going through the development process?
I think it all depends on the project and the particular artist that you're working with, how much and how little they want or need you to collaborate. I'm always there to help shape, but I also always want to be cognizant that like this is not a project. I am not a writer. This is not the project that I am creating. So I think it's a very fine line to be a great set of outside eyes and shepherd and help while not trying to impose, my specific will onto a project. I think that's where you can get into trouble.
With the creators that you're working with, in terms of the decision-making process, do you decide kind of very early on that this show's focus, or the audience that we're chasing over this show is global, as opposed to, say, we think this show is potentially going to work better in the US or some other territories? And how much then does the development process temper around that approach?
I think inherently, just my particular shows that I work on, we're always looking at the globe. I'm personally never developing for a specific territory or region. We have different, local original development teams and everything that are developing for specific regions. But my personal position is I'm trying to make television series for the global service.
I don't know if it's possible to gauge this, but is there a kind of an average amount of time that a large scale show needs in development, say from the point that a show is optioned? Is the average like 18 months to 2 years to potentially be getting it into production? Because some of the streaming timelines seem, obviously, compared to the days of linear network television, things are operating very differently because the scale of the projects is obviously quite different. But is there kind of an average timeline that you're kind of baseline shooting for with a series?
I wish I could say that there was, an average timeline, but as I'm thinking about all the different shows I've worked on, they've all moved at different speeds. Some things move very quickly. We ordered them straight to series and there's enough material and we go. Others, we have to, develop something by optioning a piece of IP and then we have to find the team and build it. And there's no real exact metric on how long that will take. I think in production, yes, we generally they take honestly the scope and scale of these shows, they take years to make because we're producing the whole season all at once in most cases, which that's upwards of 8 episodes. And so that could take just the production of it alone could take a year, and then just the production of just the post production alone to do some of these VFX could take another year. So there's no real average from development to screen, but it does tend to take a long time once you're in production, at least a year and a half to 2 years. That's once you just get into production.
Say, for example, with something like Fallout, where this is coming from an existing IP because we have the video game, immensely successful and a hugely popular global video game franchise. But it's a tricky game to try and adapt as well because the tone of it is quite quirky and quite unique, and there's a sense of humor in there that's a little off the beaten track, I suppose. In that occasion, how long did it take for Graham and Geneva to come on board, and like how long a development process was it from there once they were?
I do think Fallout moved relatively quickly. Jonah and the Kilter team had been speaking with Geneva and Graham just about a variety of projects. So I know that they had been wanting to collaborate with them beyond Fallout. And when Fallout presented itself, they quickly came together and found each other and found the idea. I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was moving pretty quickly. I remember them pitching us their take and getting to a script rather quickly. And then that initial script that came in was just very incredible. And it is seen from the pilot that was shot. It is it was in great shape when they brought it in, and we moved very quickly from there and started producing the show relatively quickly because we were all so excited.
When you're building a slate for Prime, trying to put the, and I suppose, does MGM Plus also fall into your wheelhouse for consideration for projects, or is it just for Prime?
I only work for Amazon MGM Studios. MGM Plus is a different team.
Okay. How is the determination made about the projects that you do want to move forward with? Because there does seem to be a big investment in terms of IP being a major driving factor quite significantly across the board in terms of Prime's programming. So are you constantly trying to identify new pieces of IP, whether it's in books or video games or elsewhere, that you think potentially could work as shows? Or is there also still an opening for a writer or a team of writers to come in and pitch you a piece of original IP that could potentially work for the slate as well?
I think a great idea comes from anywhere. There's awesome pieces of IP like video games and books and the MGM IP and all the cool existing ideas. But I'm always interested personally, and I know the company is in supporting original storytelling as well. I always try to remind people that original IP was once an original story, an original idea as well. So I think there's very much an openness to do for stories to come from anywhere.
In terms of the marketplace at the moment, are there specific things that maybe you guys are interested in or looking for going forward, or is that a constantly kind of shifting?
I don't think I can speak specifically to anything particularly we're looking for. I think we're always looking for just great stories at the moment. I don't have any specific, like, we're looking for, you know, X show about X. But I don't operate in that way. I operate on what are great stories, and you know them when you hear them.
You said you were a video gamer there a little bit earlier on, and obviously the video game thing seems to be quite a big component at the moment for Prime because obviously Fallout's been a massive success for you, but we've got God of War that's just started filming as well. We've got Mass Effect, which is in development, I believe, with Daniel Casey, I think, attached to showrunner. Ron Moore doing God of War, who, props for that because I think he's one of the best showrunners to walk the earth, basically. And there's no better man to be doing a genre adaptation of a show. And then Warhammer 40K, I think, with Henry Cavill attached as well. So this is obviously quite a big space. Why, aside from, if you like, the fact that obviously there's large fandoms already attached to these games and people, significant numbers of people playing them all over the world and continuing to play them on a regular basis. But why do you think these particular shows work for Prime in the sense of attracting a wider non-gamer audience as well?
I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We look for things that resonate from like a human perspective, and I think one of the reasons Fallout worked, aside from it already being a very popular IP, and it has such an interesting and unique and original world and tone, but those characters, Lucy, the Ghoul, Maximus, they had very distinct and human relatable drives. I mean, Lucy is a girl who just lost her father and is trying to go and save him, which is, on one hand very relatable, but on top of that, she's someone that's leaving this sheltered world that she was raised up in, and it's forced into this larger world where she's having her beliefs challenged and realizing maybe not everything she was taught was exactly accurate, and she's having to kind of form her own opinions as she's kind of exploring this brave new world. And I think that is one of the most humanly relatable experiences in life, as you go from being a child to an adult. And I think that really resonated with people. And that's especially with video games or any IP, really. When I'm looking at storytelling, it's what are the things that people can relate to and see themselves in or learn something about themselves from, because that is what like locks people that are not necessarily fans already into stories. People that wouldn't necessarily have played Fallout came to the show and really related with these characters and fell in love with them, and therefore fell in love with the world and got to experience something that they maybe wouldn't have engaged with otherwise.
I think it's really interesting as well to see the extent that the fan base have accepted that, because I saw that Walton Goggins actually voices the ghoul in the new expansion of the game, which I think is the first time that those two iterations of Fallout have actually kind of joined forces in the actual game world. And I think it goes to show that, like, what a great job was done there, that like the fans actually want that, and Bethesda recognizing that as the game developer as well. So maybe we'll see a bit more of that going forward as well. Like, is that just icing on the cake, or would you take that as a sign of a job being well done as well?
I mean, I think it's awesome. I wasn't involved in it at all, but I think it's great. I think it just means that we did our job in making sure that the DNA and spirit of Fallout was captured in this adaptation, and that it was done with such love and care that the fans who really owned it first felt seen. My absolute favorite moment of working on that series was the night it launched. I was scrolling the hashtag on, I think it was Twitter at the time, I don't know, and seeing all of these fans saying that, we feel seen. They got it right. They saw us, and that was just incredible. As a fan myself, that we were able to do right by them.
It's a hard enough thing to accomplish in this day and age, which I might come to again in a minute as well. So congratulations to Kilter, Prime, yourself, everybody involved in doing that, because it's really becoming, I think, an increasingly difficult thing to accomplish in the marketplace today. I'm just wondering, as part of the job in relation to what we're talking about there, how much of your day is spent on a PS5 or an Xbox, or reading comics or books, or
I don't know if I want to share how much time, because I don't want to get fired. I'm just kidding. No, probably not as much as I would like, but a lot of it kind of goes in waves. It goes in seasons of. I always try to stay up on things that are moving around in the gaming space or the publishing space, but there are some times during the year where I'm focused more on bringing, the shows that I have to life, and others when I'm looking for more, development, thinking about the future. I try to do it all the times, all the year round, but it definitely does come in, like, it just kind of comes in natural waves. I'm trying to think of like the last new game I played, because I did some replays recently.
Resident Evil.
I haven't played that. I hear it's great. I did play Expedition 33 was a big watermark for me. I thought that was incredible. I played that twice. I think that might have been, no, I'm sure there was something else new after that. Hades 2, all of those games. I got really into the Blueprint.
Blueprints is amazing. There's 300 hours of my life played into Blueprints at this stage. If anybody hasn't played that game, it is one of the most amazing, unique puzzle gamers out there as well. I don't know how you would turn that into a show, but there is a ton of lore and mythology in there that could be. If Tonda Ross is by any chance listening, maybe you guys should have a conversation at some point in time, because that would be amazing.
It was pure art. I thought it was incredible. Highly emotional for as well. It was just, and the score was incredible.
Yeah, the Gustin and Triggs guys, they did an amazing job with the score. Well, let's see if we've planted a seed there for you potentially to consider of developing Blueprints down the line. One of the other things that was announced there recently as well was a different side of the IP world, if you like, that Prime are doing Rebecca Yarris's Fourth Wing. And this is the book that's kind of credited with giving birth to the romantasy genre, kind of in fiction, one of the like really big signature novels in that space. What was it about that book and the whole kind of idea of romantasy? Is it the fact that here's something that's massively blown up on Book Talk that we're aware that there's a super engaged audience out there for, or is it again primarily we think this is an amazing story and we want to tell this story in a TV show, or both?
Well, I was not involved in actually securing the book. The book came to me to develop afterwards. I do know we secured it before publication, so it wasn't, oh, we saw this blew up on Book Talk. We just thought the idea was incredible and there was an awesome vision. It just happened to happen that the world agreed with us once it was published. So I think that is just it's an incredible opportunity, and it's such an amazing series. Again, I like Fallout. It has a very passionate fandom, so the expectations are high, but the team behind it is making it with such care and love. So I think I'm hoping that the team will do it justice.
I don't know what you may or may not be allowed to say about that at this point in time, but is Rebecca involved in the development, or has this been kind of handed over to a showrunner to develop on their own as such?
I try not to say anything about this show because I'm terrified. Um, Rebecca is involved, of course, but I yeah try not to talk so much about this show. It's an exciting one, and I know lots of people are looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
As we've kind of already established, that there's an obvious advantage to dealing with IP in the sense that there is an existing fan base which would hopefully translate into audience and be interested in the kind of material that you're doing. In the current world, though, fan bases have become quite schismed, and there's a lot of kind of division out there in relation to whether they're enjoying material or not. As an example, with a Prime series, Rings of Power has had some difficulty with the fan base being a little split over the show. So I'm just wondering, how much do the pros and cons of existing fan bases weigh into decision making processes? There was even something there just recently with the first still image release from God of War, where there was a lot of positive reaction, but there was also some negative reaction. And it does start to feel like that some of the negative reaction, especially in the online space at the moment, feels very rage bait driven. It's kind of very engagement focused and people trying to carve out a name for themselves in relation to. So I'm just wondering where all of that kind of stuff factors into your head in terms of the development process, or does it?
I can't speak to any of those specific projects that you spoke about because I'm not working on them, but I think for me personally, as an executive, I definitely keep in mind and take take a look at some of these things. But I try to support the creators in what they're doing and trust that we are keeping the fandoms and the material in mind. I think all we can do is make sure to try and capture the DNA and essence of anything that we're adapting. That is the goal in my mind, to make sure that we are really bringing to life the IP in the spirit that it was originally created. There are, of course, always in adaptation, there's always going to be differences and there's going to be changes because, that is what the definition of adaptation is. But I think if it comes from the spirit of loving the IP and the team and knowing the IP, then I think fans and fandoms feel that. You're never gonna be able to please every single person in the world because these are all very personal things to people, and people spend hundreds of hours, especially with games, of their lives in these things. I think the best you can do is try to show the passion and love you have for an IP through your adaptation and hope that it resonates. I think we've been successful at that, and I think we will continue to be successful with just making sure that we're telling the best story that we can.
I know we talked about this a little bit earlier on, but in terms of what successes at competition, in terms of what might work in the genre space on Netflix or what might work on the genre space at Apple TV, does that have any impact in terms of maybe not decisions on the slate right now, but potentially other projects that you may look at going forward, or potentially make you interested in a team of writers or writers involved in those shows as somebody you might like to work with down the line?
Of course, there's people I'm big fans of from shows that they've done or past scripts that have never been produced that I've read or that I've just met throughout the years. And so there's definitely always people that I'm interested in in working with and shows that I admire and love, because I think there's so many great things being made across the industry at the moment. In terms of how it factors into my development, yes, there are definitely, as I'm building things, there are people I'm thinking about wanting to work with. And so I'm thinking about that. In terms of projects that I take on, I personally, as Scott Farris, the development executive, I definitely look around the landscape and see, is there a green space? Is there is there an opening for this story so that it doesn't feel too duplicative of something else? Like, how do I make sure that we're developing things that feel distinct and there's so many things to watch and so many great things to watch. I really feel like I want to make sure that we're making things different enough so that they cut through the noise. There's just so much now. It's not like it used to be when there was like 4 television
Yeah,
stations.
it's got to be so hard right now, right? Because it almost feels like super saturated a little bit, and it's not just you're competing with like what all the other streamers are doing. You're also competing with video games, with social media, with all the other potential avenues that places that people can spend their time. And yet, at the same time, especially with the kind of shows that you're working on, they're quite costly things to do. They're very time intensive kind of shows to make. So you're obviously hoping to try and be hitting a home run more often than you're not, like coming out of the gate, like in that regard. But how much stress and so does that put on you as you're kind of going through the process to kind of, because like how much of the time, because I'm sure it has to factor in a way, how much of the time you're spending during the development process going, what is the audience for this? Are we still catering to the audience that we think is there for this?
Yeah, I think, listen, we're always trying to keep I'm always trying to keep the audience into account and just make sure that we're making the best story for them. It's stressful that the amount of yes, it's stressful making these things that cost a lot of money, of course, but also I think it's super exciting, and it's super exciting that there's so much being made. There's so many stories, and so there's almost something for everyone out there. And so my focus becomes, okay, great. How do we make this story that we're telling the greatest it can be? I find when there's so much, sometimes it's much easier to focus on to focus in on the more narrow, and say, okay, great. How do we just make this story the greatest it can be? Ignore all the rest of the noise and just focus in. That's our task, is to make whatever story that we're working on the best it can be.
So over the course of your career to date, you've already worked with some of the biggest showrunners, creators, and casts out there. If I was to ask you about a dream list potentially of people that you might like to work with, are there one or two names that might immediately come to mind in that regard?
I'm sure, like, the list is forever long. Who are people that I love? Like, I bow at the altar of Damon Lindelof. I think he is a brilliant storyteller, and would love to work with him someday. Would love to do anything with him. I think he's incredible,
And a lovely guy as well.
but so lovely, and just
Yeah.
like a passionate fan about things, it seems, which is awesome. I think the Daniels are incredible. All of their work is so singular and just alive with like creativity and ambition, which I think is awesome. I think Andrew Haig is a favorite filmmaker of mine. I think he would be great to work with. I think there's plenty of people I would love to work with.
Well, that might follow in then to this. I'm wondering, do you potentially have a 5 year plan going forward? Like where would you like to see yourself 5 years down the line from here?
Alive and happy. That seems to be my main thing at the moment. I actually don't know. I want to. I have some thinking to do there. I have had such a great fortune to work. I came into Amazon when it was like 40 people, something small like that, and I got to see the creation of a streaming. I got to be a part of the creation of a streaming service, and got to be a part of the creation of some of these gigantic epic television shows, and I continue to get to be a part of that. And so if I was to, tell my 10-year-old self what I'd be doing now, their mind would be blown. So I don't know in the next 5 years what I want to be doing. Maybe it's still doing this. Maybe it's doing it in a different way. Maybe, I think the only goal at the moment I have for myself is to be happy with whatever I'm doing, which sounds woo woo. I'm sorry.
I think that's a reasonable thing. I think most people would fall into whatever I'm doing, can I be happy doing it? But is there potentially any interest in like producing, directing, writing stuff yourself, like down the line, or?
I don't know. Stay tuned. Watch this space. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm an ever evolving person personally. And so I'm constantly like, maybe it is producing, maybe it's something else, maybe it's continuing doing this. I couldn't tell you what the future has written, but I guess I'm just trying to remain open to it.
Would you have three potentially key pieces of advice from somebody who is starting out as a development executive at this point in time, or interested in doing that as a job?
What do I think? I think read, consume consume sounds so intense. But like read, watch, go to plays, go to play video games, read comic books, read articles, find things that you like, figure out what you like, and figure out what about storytelling lights you up and gets you excited, and what parts of stories and types of characters, draw you in. Because I think a big part of being a development executive is refining your point of view and refining, your taste. So that's one of them. Two, I would say, I think this is not just for being a development, just but being a human in particular, is be adaptable. I think adaptability is like one of the biggest markers of success as a human. Is just being able to roll with the punches. They're not always punches. Roll with the hugs too. Just being able to go with the flow and see what happens, and be open to the world taking you on a path that you didn't expect. And what's the third one? I guess, in addition to the reading, consuming, pay attention to the artists of the things that you like. Start to follow them. Start to figure out who are the people that are working on and creating the things that you like, and keep track of them and see what they're doing, and invest in knowing what they're doing, and if you can, getting to know them and understanding how they look at creativity. I think one of the greatest parts of my job is that I get to meet so many different people and just talk about creativity and talk about storytelling and stories. And I would say do that with your friends, do that with anyone, just invest in that.
Can I ask, actually, I should have asked this earlier on, but when pitches are coming into you, are you sitting in on the pitches, or is there a team working under you and then they kind of bring you what they think is the kind of strongest material to be choosing from?
I hear pitches myself. I hear them with my team members. Other people hear them. I don't hear all of them. I would die. Uh, but yeah, I hear pitches all the time.
How many pitches a week do you have to kind of deal with, or does it work like that? Or
I wouldn't say that there's like an average number per week. It really all depends. Some weeks I might not hear any pitches, and some days I might hear three. It all kind of ebbs and flows. And in the genre space, it's probably a little bit less than a traditional drama comedy space. There's probably just a few less pitches, but there's still a lot.
and if anybody came in and said, "Here's a show, and it's mostly about two people talking in a room, and that's all we kind of do every episode," would that be a wonderful, refreshing, easy kind of gig to do? Or
Listen, I think that might be even harder, because you got to keep that interesting for 8 episodes. But yeah, I work in genre. I love everything. It's so funny. There's a lot of people ask, like, "What is your thing? What do you do? What do you?" And yes, I work in genre, but I like everything. I like I'll watch all types of movies and TV shows. I'll read all types of books. I'm not just like, I only read fantasy. So I would be thrilled to develop a show. Like, what a challenge that would be, to develop a show of just two people talking in a room.
I know it's kind of the Tarantino test, isn't it? Like, the only way you can afford to make a movie is put a couple of people in a room and have them talking to each other. Um, in this day and age, possibly even harder to accomplish. Okay, can I ask one last question, and then we do this little thing at the end where called Creator's Choice, which is kind of a kind of a fast little. We'll give you a set of numbers. You pick a question, and it's kind of to do with what your cultural consumption is like at this particular moment in time, if that makes sense. But just before I do that, is there a question I should have asked you that I haven't asked you?
I don't think so. You asked some really good questions, some of which I'd probably answered very poorly.
Well, is it okay then? Is there a bar in LA where all the devs hang out from all the different streamers and swap war stories?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm not one of those people, at least. I go home. Um, uh, yeah, I don't think so. When I was an assistant, there were definitely bars like, oh, that's where all the assistant goes for drinks and everything. I don't even think they exist anymore. So but I don't think there's a Cheers bar for development executives.
Okay, because I'm sure there must be a couple of good war stories out there that if
Oh
you have a really
yeah.
good war story that you want to share, please feel free to do.
I'll save that for, a memoir one day.
Okay. All right. Well, then, if we go to Creator's Choice, if you can give me, we'll do two or three of these if we have the time to do it. If you give me a number between 1 and 10,
7.
7. Last book you read that had a lasting impact on you and why?
I'm obsessed. So I don't always get to read like fantasy novels for pleasure anymore because I'm always like figuring out, is this a television show? Is this a movie? What's going on? And I read the first book in this series. There's two now, but there's more coming a few years ago, and became so obsessed with it. And the second book recently came out, I think last November, and it's just I think I've read each one of them 3 times. The first book is called A Will of the Many, and the second is called A Strength of the Few. And it's a fantasy world that is just so highly original. It's kind of a Roman-esque fantasy world, and the story was I just love the story so much. And you cry, you laugh, like it's just I can't stop thinking about it sometimes.
Who's the author?
James Islington.
James Islington. Okay.
I think that's how you pronounce it. I hope that's how you pronounce it.
I will add that to the TBR. Another number, please.
5.
Whose Instagram feed gets your regular attention?
Oh, I try really not to do Instagram. I'm very bad at it. Well, I think it's good for a lot of things. I try to not pay attention. Let's open it and see. Hmm. I get a lot from like art.net. I love art, like of all kinds, but I get a lot of I have a lot of artists in my feed. So art.net usually has some really good stuff.
That is one of the more sophisticated answers we've had to that particular question.
Oh, please.
So,
I was not meaning it to be sophisticated. It's just the first thing I thought of. I mean, my thing has all kinds. You know what I'm having a hard time with now is I'll see things and I'll send it to friends and be like, wow, that's cool. And they're like, that's AI.
they really need to start posting or making clear what is or what isn't. And I think especially after the ruling that came out of the US courts there the other day about AI work can't be copyrighted, I think that's going to be a very important distinction kind of going forward. What one last number from you?
3.
Oh, actually, this is perfect. Maybe just based on the discussion we just had, but most addictive or enjoyable video game you've ever played.
Oh, that's like Sophie's choice. I've ever played ever. Oh
Ever.
my goodness. I don't think I could pick an ever. I mean, I've played all the God of War games like forever. I love God of War. Most recently, I guess most recently, I only recently went back and did a replay of it, but I had to the first time I played this game, I had to then kind of stop because I thought, oh my gosh, I might get fired from my job. Was Baldur's Gate, the most recent Baldur's Gate. I played that all the way through and I was just so addicted to it. that I got nervous that I would get fired. But then I replayed it recently, and it was okay. It was also equally addictive. There are a couple others. Elden Ring, when that first came out, that really just like those From Software games just destroy me.
They're just too hard, though. It's like battles, the fights are just too hard.
I stopped playing them now. Well, I stopped playing. Like I'm not playing the expansions of Elden Ring, but it's just so beautiful and cool. And then during the pandemic, this is embarrassing. During the pandemic, I had never really played Animal Crossing. But that new Animal Crossing came out for the Switch during the pandemic, and I played that, and it got so dark to the point where like I wanted all the things for my island, and so there was like this black market trading website called Nukazon that I would like go on and make trades with people, and then finally I had to just be like, you are an adult human, you need to stop playing this. So I had to put it away. I'm sure my island is very sad.
I didn't realize Animal Crossing got that dark.
It got dark for me because I was like, I have to trade with everything. I need to get the Zodiac furniture. I must have one of everything. I don't know what that says about me, but there we go.
Well, listen, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us today. I have to say, if there was ever any job in the world I could do, I think I would love to do your job. It sounds like an amazing opportunity to play in a huge, wonderful, creative sandbox on a regular basis. But continued good luck with all the projects coming up, and I hope that maybe potentially a Blueprints TV show may be something that you can work some magic on down the line. But in the meantime, thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been so fun to talk. I don't like talking about myself, and you made it kind of easy. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to State of the Arts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us and that you can join us again for a new episode. Until then, please remember that art matters.